Hi,
Thank you,
President
Madam
Cohen.
Chair.
Thank you. Look forward to your testimony.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the Legislative Budget Committee. I'm once again thankful for the privilege to address you all, and it's an honor to appear in front of you on behalf of the men and women I represent. They are New Yorkers who put service first and bravely protect their fellow citizens. They are also New Yorkers who have consistently continued to do their best as the engine of the judicial branch under adverse financial circumstances and extraordinarily lean personnel conditions. So today I thank you as we can, well, tonight I thank you, as we can with one voice express our concerns about how the unified court system budget affects both the professional and personal aspects of our lives. As Judge Marks outlines in this year's budget, the last 5 judiciary budgets have left the court system, quote, unable to fill the positions left void by attrition, end quote. Perhaps the most glaring problem of that sentiment is the inability through the oversight to maintain the standards of safety and security that this system had proudly enjoyed for years. The depth of our losses cannot simply be stated in a sentence or two. Our court officers are quite candidly spread too thin. There are just not enough of us to get the job done in the tremendous fashion we've become known for. We are working with 13.3% less security staffing than in 2009 while absorbing more work done by more judges in shorter periods of time. It is unacceptable to put at risk the safety and well-being of all court employees, court users, and jurors. Court parts formerly staffed by 4 or 5 officers are now staffed by 2 or 3. Supervisors normally in charge of 1 part are now in charge of managing 3 or 4. All of this occurs while we see an annual increase in the amount of cases handled. The need for full staffing in our facilities prevents our officers from being sent for yearly training for equipment and CPR. Many officers cannot spend their accrued vacation time with their families because managers cannot afford to grant them the time. The system is not recovering and our employees are suffering. In fact, the system itself is staying above water on the already overburdened backs of its employees. In a preventative health initiative introduced by our union, we found our membership to be 19% higher than the national average for hypertension. The dearth of staffing and the administration's failure to restore our losses will have a profound effect and a long-lasting effect on these men and women, not only at work, but as husbands and wives and mothers and fathers. Furthermore, these austerity budgets have actualized deficiencies in our courthouse infrastructure. Early closures and the cessation of overtime have left our buildings empty at a much earlier hour than in the past. We have found homeless people living in the bowels of our courthouses and discover people in unauthorized areas on a very regular basis. These are avoidable security breaches that in the past, at full staffing, would be unheard of, a time when the emphasis was on people and not the bottom line. These landmarks of justice are targets, and we will see catastrophic events take place if we do not restore staffing and overtime to its proper levels which protect New York. Our bargaining unit will be without a contract for 5 years come March 31st. Our members want a fair contract. They deserve one. What they cannot afford to do is accept a contract that sets them back and gives back provisions they have earned. Many non-security personnel in our system have done that, and we are expected to follow suit. We cannot support or accept working under a restructured pay scale which negatively alters these employees' earnings. Additionally, this budget calls for funds in excess of $100 million to be spent on steering business into the judicial system. A budgetary item to ensure court engagement is improper when the very same budget begs so many shortcomings. The system must stand on its own 2 feet again before it can use its own funds to escort people into the system. Our members remain those who keep our system on its feet. Judge Marks has also been on the record at the Commission on Judicial Compensation, as well as in the media, espousing the financial woes of the judiciary. What is interesting to note is that much of what he says applies to our members as well. He says that the state, quote, has the ability to pay the increase advocated, end quote, in reference to a $27,000 increase in salary for each of the state's judges. My members are certainly not seeking such a wage hike, just a fair and equitable wage over the last 5 years. Judge Marks also states that New York is historically the most expensive state to live in. Well, 99% of our members live in this great state. He goes on to say that inflation has gone up 42% since 1999. If so, it has gone up for all of us, including members of this committee and the workers I represent. Finally, Judge Marks advocates the introduction of an automatic cost of living adjustment into the judicial pay package. I too support this for our members because it's the only way to keep up with the ever-rising costs associated with living and working in New York. I applaud Judge Marks for bringing to light important financial issues, but they must apply to everyone within the framework of the system. I fully understand the role of the judiciary. However, if these principles are not addressed to include all under its banner, then the unified court system is widening an already existing double standard. The judiciary is the face of fairness and equity, and it must practice what it preaches. I have continued to advocate for new, innovative, and useful projects to enhance security at all court facilities. I renew the call for budgeted funds to create a K-9 program for which studies have already been done. This program was green-lighted, only to be derailed at the last minute because an administrator did not like dogs. All of New York will like dogs when they prevent an explosive device from being planted or deter the plans of a potential active shooter and the damage these types of events could inflict. The fact is this is a program that this system should have implemented 20 years ago. Archaic thinking and an inability to install advanced training procedures have left us in the last century. A real and mandatory active shooter protocol is sorely needed. We must be prepared for its near inevitability based on recent national events, including one in our very own Middletown City Court. We need practical, experienced training from the top experts in the field. This is not a program you want to have to install after a mass carnage event. A real endeavor must be made to upgrade our magnetometers, our X-ray machines, radios, and cameras to the latest technologies used in federal facilities and by thousands of police departments nationwide. These programs and ideas will also help us not only do our jobs the way they should be done, but with an eye towards the future. Law enforcement has become a dynamic field, and we must embrace that with personnel, philosophy, and financial support. This is a brief synopsis of some of the most conspicuous problems facing our workforce in the court system of New York. These things must be met with certitude that our system needs to be brought up to speed. Our court officers cannot be left behind again. We are playing catch-up, and it is only a matter of time before calamitous circumstances result. We are a proud and patient group of the state workforce, but our patience is eroding and our pride is being destroyed by continued neglect to the things we need to properly execute the duties we have nobly sworn. I ask this committee to pass the judicial budget as it is constituted and not to make further cuts. It is critical to the system's recovery and, frankly, to the our survival within the workforce. The time has come to make a stand and aid in the restoration of the system and those of us who protect it and all it stands for. I want to thank everybody here and for your time and for your hard work.
Thank you. Assembly?
No questions from the Assembly, but thank you for your testimony.
We thank you very much for your
Thanks.
testimony. Next up is,
Pamela Brown.
Pamela Brown. Thank you. Court Clerk Associations.
And on deck is Billy Amont from the Court Officers Benevolent Association, Nassau County.
Good evening, esteemed senators and assembly people. My name is Pamela Brown, and I'm the president of the New York State Court Clerks Association. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss Governor Andrew Cuomo's executive budget. I represent about 1,550 court clerks in the city of New York. We support increased money to the courts as you legislators examine the courts and approve a budget. The budget crunch in 2010 left my union with 250 fewer court clerks to make the courts work. There was a freeze on hiring, but there was no retirement freeze. The workload did not decrease, however, but it increased with each new program, initiative, task, and system. When anything new is introduced and when you pass any new laws, it falls upon the clerks to carry it out, which we do as we are consummate professionals. The staffing shortage continues with the numbers of clerks and other court personnel severely depleted. There are court clerks working off the clock because they are diligent and conscientious and do not want to see unfinished work the next day. They want to start off clean. Working at a manic pace should not and cannot be sustained. Additionally, working off the clock is illegal. Not all courtrooms can be staffed. We have clerks covering multiple parts, and we have had judges sitting in chambers for lack of staff. All parts must be adequately staffed. The courts are closing earlier, and special permission is mandated before overtime can be approved. A woman went to family court seeking an order of protection, and she was told to go to criminal court as it was past the hour that family court was in operation. There was a strict closing time to not yield overtime, and the directive indicated that such cases were to be referred to criminal court. Previously, she would have been allowed to file in family court. Criminal court sent her back to family court as they were probably unaware of family court's closing at that hour. Dejected, she obviously gave up and left. She was subsequently killed by her husband. If she were a DuPont or a Carnegie, this case would have received a lot of attention. But she was an ordinary New Yorker with no name recognition or fame. This was the ultimate. Someone lost their life so the courts would not incur overtime costs. What price is a life? Lack of funding has life and death consequences. Not all insufficient funding has such immediate egregious outcomes. Most are smaller, but harmful nonetheless, and affect people's well-being. The shortage of funds for court clerks has created tremendous backlogs in every court in many areas, i.e. warrants in housing court, small claims are backed up for months, and judgments that are yet to be entered, to name a few. Not everyone is so middle class that they can easily miss work to come to court. There must be adequate staff, in particular court clerks, to minimize the time the public spends away from their jobs. People cannot and should not have to spend all day in court. Many people have such little vacation or sick time that a day in court is a day without pay. The public is suffering and receiving short shrift. Justice delayed is justice denied. In family court, in the referee parts, there is the referee and the court clerk. The court clerk is a receptionist, security, court attorney, and court clerk all in one. These parts handle orders of protection, custody, visitation, and foster care. Previously, these cases were handled in a courtroom with a judge, a court clerk, security, and a law assistant. The staffing in these referee parts was created legislatively, and it must be corrected legislatively. Each of these parts must be required to have 2 court clerks. You must make this right. Over the years, there has been the realignment of lines and titles, and negotiations and talks have failed to correct a classification system that is severely out of balance. We have been told that these issues would be addressed, but that this has not come to fruition. Court officers have been reclassified for a 3rd time, and the clerks have not yet been reclassified once in 38 years. The court officers deserve their reclassification, but as their supervisors, we also deserve this. This has upset the hierarchy. How can you not upgrade the supervisors? You cannot promote up only to lose ground. This is against the natural order. The courts are in the business of dispensing justice and equitable relief, and it is the court clerks who facilitate this. We are the backbone of the court system. During the years of the budget crunch, court clerks were #1 on the wish list of chief clerks. Seasoned judges tell new judges, if you don't listen to the clerk, you're crazy. Clerks are retiring in unprecedented numbers for a non-buyout year. The hiring freeze and zeros have erased the career path. The clerks are not receiving the credit, acknowledgement, or appreciation we have earned. We want, need, deserve, and have earned reclassification. It is the clerks who move the paperwork and allow the courts to function. Whenever any new change is invoked, the task of the court clerk changes as well. Our jobs as court clerks have become convoluted, complex, and all-encompassing. Court clerks supervise court officers, and they promote into our ranks. With their third reclassification, the salary gap between us has shortened. There are newly promoted court clerks who have chosen to go back to the ranks of officers. The job of a court clerk has become so challenging, and with such a small pay difference, that officers would prefer to roll around on the floor with defendants and litigants. This never happened before and is due to a lack of reclassification for court clerks, which has turned everything upside down. To become a court clerk, you must pass a test which some attorneys could not pass. You give up months of your life and forego numerous activities for the sake of studying. Some court officers sacrificed so much to become clerks, and despite their forfeiting so many endeavors, they are going back to uniform. In order to stay competitive, we must be reclassified, which would reflect the changes in our function and value and allow us to reestablish our rightful place. There must be sufficient funding for the courts, the judiciary, and court clerks. The budget must have sufficient funding, which would allow us to be reclassified.
Thank you very much.
Equilibrium must be restored. The rank structure must be preserved. The financial consequences of the underfunding of the court budget and its effect on court clerks and consequently the courts must be reversed. The loss of 250 court clerks saved $22.5 million annually for the last 6 years, a total of $135 million. We have more than paid for our own reclassification. We who made the biggest effort and sacrifice in keeping the courts functioning smoothly must reap our just reward. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
No questions here.
Thank you very much.
We
Thank you.
appreciate your coming and testifying tonight.
Thank you very much.
My wife is a clerk in a justice court, but she would agree you're crazy if you don't listen to the clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our next testifier is Bill Emont, President, Court Officers Benevolent Association of Nassau County. I can't speak.
It's good there. And up next is Bill Dobbins from the Suffolk County Court Employees Association.
That was Pamela and Bill's now.
As you've been here for about 11 hours, so have I, and now, of course, I have dry mouth, so if you indulge with
So
me
do
just
I.
for a minute. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. My name is Billy Emont, and I'm a 32-year court employee, and I'm the president of COBANC, the Court Officers Benevolent Association of Nassau County, representing not only court officers, but approximately 65 different job titles, including court clerks, court attorneys, reporters, interpreters, analysts, judges' secretaries, judges' law clerks, and what we call the back office workers, who really should be called the backbone of the system, office workers, just to name a few of the titles. I asked to speak to you today to give you a report from the trenches and let you know that how well my members are equipped and supported to handle the business of serving the public in their vital role as a support staff in the administration of justice to the citizens of Nassau County and, of course, New York State. My message to you is, we're just barely holding on for over 7 years. With layoffs and an attrition-based budget, that being when someone retires, no one's hired to replace them, and the responsibilities of their job are spread out to the remaining workforce. We've been getting the job done, as I've said, for years now. In my bargaining unit, COBANC, we have 20% less workers than 7 years ago, and we're still getting the job done. We have been spread thin, working harder than ever, without a decent compensation package offer to any of the court unions. In fact, we've been offered the worst compensation package of any municipality in New York State that I know of, and that's after taking 20% layoffs. Over the past 5 years, inflation has increased by almost exactly 10%. Ours and all court union workers' compensation package has been 0, 0, 0, 2%, and 2%, or 4% for those same 5 years, and again with 20% less workers, and the job is still getting done. In 2011, when our contract expired, the state was just beginning to come out of the worst period of worldwide recession, and when it came time to discuss a new contract, we knew that would be probably less than we deserved, and we understood it. Working with no contract and the prospects of zero compensation, we forged on, still getting the job done. Even after desk became vacant and more work was put on our desks, again, we understood. We are extremely professional and prideful, and our work ethic wouldn't allow us to have work backlog or to slide the window closed at exactly 5 o'clock, leaving members of the public to go home and try again tomorrow because the members weren't getting compensated past that time. Many of my members, unsanctioned by their union, are actually coming in earlier, working through all or part of their lunch hour, and leaving well after 5 o'clock, off the clock. There was and is virtually no overtime, and my members, and I say God love them, refused to let that demoralizing condition affect their work product. They were and are doing this to make it work until the cavalry comes to the rescue. Well, it's been 5 years since we had a contract, and it's time. We cannot hold our breath underwater for too much longer. Sick leave usage is up, disciplines are up, grievances are up, and morale is way down. Senator Savino said at Justice DeFiore's confirmation hearings not to be afraid to ask for more money for the budget, and said we want to help. Committee members, we need your help. I'm hoping you can help now because CoBank is at the impasse stage of negotiations with the Office of Court Administration, and unless something changes dramatically, we will be back to you in Albany to settle our contract. We don't have binding arbitration, as do many of our police and peace sister and brother officer organizations, and our remedy to resolving our contract when all else fails is you here in Albany. It doesn't have to come to that. Being that the court system had 3 flat budgets, or 0% increases, while the governor was calling for a 2% cap, we feel that this vital segment of society, the court system, is owed more than 2.4% increase it's now asking for. As you know, the courts are not a discretionary agency. We are included in the U.S. and the New York State Constitution as an absolute right that society is entitled to, an important part of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. How would we function if the criminal courts didn't have funding to complete their task? There'd be real potential for anarchy. Wouldn't society soon be crippled if, due to lack of funding, there were not enough court workers and judges on staff to interpret and enforce contracts? They wouldn't be worth the paper they're written on. What about the havoc that would rain down if our matrimonial courts were not funded to the point where there could be swift resolution to one of the more volatile divisions of what the court system handles? Over the past half a decade, our courts have been funded at an average of approximately 1.4% when the governor has capped everybody else at 2%. And by the way, that's again with 20% layoffs and still getting the job done. It's time to put the proper amount needed back into the system. I not only ask you to grant the requested 2.4% increase, but to determine how much funding the court actually needs to get back on its feet, be it 3%, 4%, or whatever is needed to properly serve the citizens of New York State. During contract negotiations, we were told that the Office of Court Administration had no money at all to increase the compensation for a respectable, somewhat close to cost of living offer, so we started digging to see how the budget was spent. And you don't have to dig too far to see that there's a whopping $85 million budgeted for fiscal 16-17 for a program that we all know as Civil Legal Services. Now, as you know, this program to help the public that cannot afford counsel for important civil legal matters, foreclosures, family court matters, and landlord-tenant matters, just to name a few. A noble and worthy program, no doubt. However, we feel it has no business being funded through the court budget. The Office of Court Administration budget is 90% paychecks to people. We don't have tractors and trucks like the DOT. 90% of that budget money goes to workers' paychecks, which will then, of course, get circulated back into communities and into paying taxes. We can't afford to fund a program of this magnitude through the court budget. It even has a sense of impropriety that the court budget money is going to attorneys that appear before the same organization that funded them to represent people of need. We've been reading that the state is so flush with money now, we feel it should be a program that's financed through the executive branch and not the Office of Court Administration. We can't afford it. Our buildings are in horrendous condition. Our staffing needs to be reinforced, and our workers, who are the foundation of the court system, needed to be treated with the respect they have earned by being compensated fairly and equitably. We are the middle class. We fuel the economy. If we do well, history has shown that society does well. You can't fund programs from money intended to make the court works on all levels on the backs of middle-class workers in that system. In fact, ironically, the Civil Legal Service Program was formulated and created and expanded at the same time we were being laid off and offered zero compensation. If the Civil Legal Service Program was picked up by the executive branch, we could fund the judges' raises and fair and equitable compensation for my members and members of the other court unions. And with all the surplus money that New York State has, I think they should expand the Civil Legal Service Program under the executive branch, though. It would most probably instantly resolve the contracts of the remaining one-third of the unions without a contract. 3 of the 4 without a contract are speaking today. It would not burden future budgets with recurring monies, and it would show appreciation and recognition for how hard and long all state court employees have been working and sacrificing. I believe that Chief Justice DeFiore, could also require that approximately 60,000 non-municipal New York State Bar Association attorneys donate 14 hours pro bono a year, or half a day per quarter, to keep this program operating as it has been. Or she can caucus with the legislature, her OCA experts, Bar Association representatives, and union leaders to figure out how to take this program out of the court budget. Honorable members of this committee, please don't kick the can down the street, because as I said, if we don't resolve this situation now, very soon we will be back in a number of months asking you to impose what would be a fair contract on us and the Office of Court Administration. We don't want to give you more work, but we may have no choice. We're willing to roll the dice as to what you think is fair, because we don't think anyone would fathom, with a 20% reduction in workforce and the job still getting done every day in every courthouse in every state, that reasonable people, such as you, would think that the fair number is 0. Due to low-paying salaries, I've been told by Human Resources that the courts are having a retention problem. Now, couple that with the fact that the state has the ability to pay. With the inadequate budgets that they've been given, OCA keeps cutting and cutting to the point now where we have retention problems, staffing problems, contract problems, people working out of title, and very serious morale problems, and extreme security issues. Although OCA's own security staffing guidelines say that there should be a minimum of 3 court officers in a criminal part, and 2 officers on a perimeter patrol, they're actually down to 1 now. We didn't squawk when it was 2, although we didn't think it was safe, but again, we tried to make it work.
Thank you for that testimony, and we appreciate it, President Emont, and we would like for you to keep in touch with us and let us know how things are going. You heard a lot of concern today from legislative members about the court system and making sure that they're adequately staffed and up to speed. So I think you have a lot of people here who are concerned about the courts and appreciate the jobs that you do, especially in difficult circumstances. That's what it sounds like. Do we have any members who have any questions? Okay. Yeah, so thank you very much. And did you have anything else that you wanted to
Well,
add?
I just did say that...
because we do have your testimony in writing, so...
Right. Well, I just want to say that I'm the president of CoBank once again, and we're the proud members of the court system. Thank you very much for your time.
We appreciate you so
it.
much, and we appreciate you being here. Thank you. Would remind our speakers that there's 5 minutes on the clock, and our next speaker is President Bill Dobbins, Suffolk County Court Employees Association. Welcome, President Dobbins.